my screen, I see the hide floating meeting. Okay, so first thing, I think we're up to already $350 for our Habitat for Humanity fundraiser, which is pretty cool. We have a page that's specific to us. So the way that it works is I think March 30th, we're all going to meet at this construction site and basically contribute and help build a home. But as part of that, they ask us to come with a donation that covers things like supplies for the day and things like that. So if you haven't yet, please either share it on your social media, maybe contribute a couple bucks. Our goal is to raise $1,500. So we're already at $350, which is pretty cool. The next update is where am I putting? Oh, I had a design over there, but oh well. Our grand opening is set for Friday, April 1st from 4 to 6. We have a lot of cool things happening. Bridget and Desiree have been doing an amazing job. We have the City of Wilton Manors coming with a ribbon and large scissors. We are going to be giving away some really cool swag. We have a DJ and an open bar. I think it's only for us, something like that. I'm not sure. So
eyes are getting big.
we're actually right now looking into parking is a little bit of an issue there in the sense that there only are, I think it's like 9 spots. There are 11 total, but one of them is for the residential unit. Another one's for the Airbnb. So from the commercial perspective, there is about 9 spots, which isn't enough. So we're either going to have some sort of a bus leaving from here to take us there, which would be nice and fun. Yeah, especially if people drink. Or we might have a valet. We're kind of researching options right now.
Party bus.
Yeah, party bus would be. Yeah. But keep this day open. So that Wednesday is the Habitat for Humanity, and then 2 days later is our grand opening. So that's super exciting. Next update. Oh, here are my pretty designs. The timing wasn't entirely correct. I don't know what is going on with this, but oh geez.
Back it up.
I don't know why it's like being all funny, but it's supposed to say here Kyle's, there he is. So this Thursday, so Kyle's actually at a showing or a listing appointment right now, but this Thursday he's hosting it's not this Thursday, it's next, thank you. It's March 3rd. He's hosting a Find the Pot of Gold Power Hour. So the idea of that is everyone kind of comes together at 4:45. They do a quick 15-minute energetic role play. Let's do this type of thing. And then we all call for about an hour. Sorry about that. Okay. This Thursday, we have as always, on Thursdays, we have a role play. The topic is dealing with long-term buyers. Yep. So that's Thursday at 10:30. And I don't know what is going on with this, but Courtney's Monopoly update. Michael Conti again with the highest number of calls. Congratulations. Sydney, I like how you put Conti and not even Michael. Is that okay with you, Mike?
That's what I've been calling that for years. So even where I used to work, they used to call me.
Okay, cool.
My last name.
So Sydney, Conti, Maria, Tove, Sherry, Mark, Rhonda, Lee, and Ivana all passed go. And then we have Ivana and Jonathan, both with contracts. So they have collected a property. Yes. But we have 2 new ones for this week, right? Tove and Danielle.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
That's this week.
For the next week.
Perfect.
Well, congratulations to you Monopoly players. And the last update I have for you, and then we'll go into the training. Oh, so in Sync, as you guys know, there are pipeline statuses. When I go into Sync right now and I check the total number of leads in showing, it shows 83. I don't know that that's accurate. I think it's a little high. So if you have a lead that's in showing and it's not actually being shown homes right now, please change the status either to hot, to contacted, whatever else it might be. Same thing goes for appointments. Sorry?
Under contract.
Under contract, absolutely. Lastly, the top 5 label is a label that created, we created with the intent that you guys would always have an easy way to kind of target the 5 people you're working with actively. So if you have that label on lots and lots of people, you're not really using the label correctly. So either remove it or reapply it to the people that should have that top 5 label. So that's all I have for updates. Anything else, Courtney, that I missed that you want to?
No.
Cool. Okay, so let's get right into it. So I am excited because I have been working on and reading, I've been reading this book about being a great salesperson for a while, one specific book. Hold on, let me mute.
Katya. Jessica.
Can you guys please, we're hearing some feedback on our end. If you're on Zoom, if you don't mind muting. Oh, Katya, I just muted you. Okay, cool.
We'll just be,
Okay, cool. Thank you guys. Okay, so I'm going and I watched videos and I've read books and done a lot of research to try and present you guys with what I think are 3 very easy ways to be a kick. To be a good salesperson. Okay, so I also wanted to mention that I wanted to mention that a lot of the ideas that I'm going to talk about today, this is one specific book that I loved. It's called What Great Salespeople Do. Again, a lot of the concepts we're talking about are from this book. And if you like the concepts and you want to explore it more, this is a book I recommend. If you're writing it down, it's called What Great Salespeople Do by Michael Bosworth. So let's start with a question. What would you say is the #1 quality of an effective salesperson?
Listen.
Okay. Personality, listening. Absolutely in line with what I think is the answer and what this Michael Bosworth person thinks is the answer.
I think it's being likable.
It's actually the ability to create a rapport emotionally. And it's all of these things that you guys said, right? So if you look here, I talk about, so superior salespeople have the ability to intuitively build a relationship. They listen, like you said, Mike Conti. And they also establish sincerity early on, which enables your buyer to feel more confident. So we're going to talk about in today's training different ways and different spins that you can use when you're specifically talking to leads and people who are interested in buying or selling real estate. But emotional rapport is the answer to that question. So it comes down to the fact that, as we all know, the 80-20 rule, which is that 20% of the agents usually bring in 80% of the business. And the reason for that is because there are only a few salespeople that are able to develop that trust mutually and also the respect. Right? So all of that, if you think about trust, you think about respect, it all comes down to the emotion and how they're feeling and whether or not they can connect with you as the salesperson. So of the 3 steps, the first step, like I already said, because emotional rapport is so important in a salesperson relationship, the very first step you want to think about is how can I emotionally connect with this person? So let's talk a little bit about that. So before I talk about ways that we can emotionally connect, how would you define selling? It's kind of a hard term to define, right? What is it that we're actually doing when you're selling something?
Providing a service, satisfying a need.
Give
So-
them what they want.
Okay, satisfying a need, providing a service. So I think that all accurate. I want to shift your perspective, and we're going to talk about how that's the traditional way of teaching selling. And I'm going to try and shift it so it's not as traditional. So if you think about selling, it's actually about influencing change, right? So you're not necessarily solving a problem. You think you are. What you're really doing is kind of helping someone decide what is the right thing to do. So essentially it's based on the greater understanding of whether or not I should trust you, Roni, to be my realtor when I list or sell or buy a home, right? It's how I decide whether or not, Michael, you're the one I want to work with when I buy this property on the beach, right? All of those things and influencing change. It's a little bit of a shift. It's not as logical as we think. And that's the shift. The shift that I'm talking about here is moving away from the idea that people do things logically. We were just talking about, Danielle was saying how she has an offer right now. It's all cash, $100,000 over the last comp. You cannot tell me that that is logic. There is no logic in that at all. That is absolutely emotion, right? Whoever is buying that house has a strong emotional need for it, whether it's their family, whether it's having a new home. It could be a lot of different factors, but I'm telling you that's not logic, right? So as I just explained, and what I'm going to try and kind of flip this whole traditional sales process on its head. The traditional sales process, a traditional sales trainer will tell you, know your product. They'll tell you, know your prospect, and they'll tell you, have a process. We, by the way, do all of this, right? We all have a process for how we sell. We all know our product and we all know the person we're working with. So this is very traditional. What I'm talking about today is why it kind of doesn't work and how we can make it better. So first, like I said, I don't know, problem is probably too strong of a word, but I think current salespeople have been taught to help buyers based on logic. But as we just talked about, it's really about more than just logic, right? I don't like these transitions. At some point in the cycle, buyers will get paralyzed and they decide to maintain the status quo. So how many of you have had a buyer that you are, especially because we're in Florida, so they're either buying a second home, right? Or they're considering moving, but there isn't necessarily that absolute need. And all of a sudden they ghost you, or they just decide, I'm not going to buy anymore, right? That happens to all of us. The reason why that happens is because that buyer got paralyzed, and it's easier to keep doing what I'm doing. It's harder to sell my current home and buy another one. Or I'm scared. I'm scared that if I do buy this second home, I'm going to regret it, right? All of these things is kind of something that we can work on and address so that we don't have those people that change their mind. The last part about this, oopsies, I'm going the wrong direction. Okay, so again, the reason why that might happen, it's not the only reason, and there's going to be those situations regardless, but one way that we can reduce the number of times that happen is we can speak to their emotion instead of speaking to their logic. And essentially the old way of thinking is that sales is linear, sales is logical, and sales is rational, but it's absolutely not. You can't tell me it's rational. If you think about people that spend X amount, or all of us, I'm sure, have bought something that was designer of some sort, right? That's not a rational purchase. That's an emotional, right? You're willing to pay times 3 or whatever, times 10 for something that probably isn't worth that, but because of that label or that logo that's on that item, that material good, that's an emotional purchase, right? So we all can agree, right, that emotions has a very big role in selling. So this is a quote I thought was great. At the end of the day, we're not thinking machines. We are feeling machines that think. And because we're salespeople and we're trying to deal with humans on a daily basis, it's so critical that we understand who it is that you're dealing with, right? Who your prospects are. And your prospect is a feeling machine, right? That comes first.
And I think the hardest part about playing to their emotions is doing it in a sincere way. And where it doesn't come off as being fake. Yeah,
I'm going to talk about some ways that I think it can become more sincere. And there's a certain way that you can do it where you're not, because we don't want to be pushy. We don't want to put pressure.
There's some people that do it and they're just not good at it.
Right.
You've been to a store and you know they're BSing it.
Yes, absolutely.
You don't want influence to be, manipulation.
No, not manipulation at all. Okay, so let's talk about the scenario. So you tell the buyer, they want to make the offer, you tell them you have to go in and ask it. And they fight back and they ignore everything you tell them and about that property, and they go in under asking and they lose the deal. That's scenario 1, which I mean, all of us have had that, right? So scenario 2, that same buyer, instead of talking to them about the fact that they have to go in and asking or hire, you talk to them about all of the things that fits their emotional need. The pool, the neighborhood, the fact that there are other kids in around the community or whatever it might be. Chances are you're going to have someone that's a little bit more flexible, right? This is not a sure thing, but it just gives them a little bit, okay, well, emotionally, this is the right home for me. I'm not thinking about the logic of it, right? So this is one way that we can talk about how emotion has a big role in how we as realtors communicate and interact with our buyers and our sellers. Oh God, I'm going the wrong way again. Sorry, technical difficulties this morning. Maybe if I just do this, does that work? Oh, it does. Cool, I'm gonna stick with my fingers instead of the mouse. Okay. So think about this. Can you imagine, we all know who Mark Zuckerberg is, right? Can you imagine buying something from someone like that? Like that is a really, what? He has no emotion. Like he's kind of like a robot. But like, I can't stress to you guys enough how important it is that as salespeople, we have to have emotion. We have to be able to personally connect and have that emotional rapport. If you don't, you will not be able to sell. Instead, you should probably go into software. Okay, let's talk about some examples. So, do your buyers buy because they can visualize themselves in a home? I would say the answer to that is yes. That's why they're buying, right? Or do they buy because it's the lowest price per square foot? Probably not. That's not often what they're doing, unless they're an investor. So this is specifically about people that are buying for their own use, by the way. So do they consider how it would look or feel, right?
Yeah.
To buy in that home? I think that's probably one of the most important things. Like, how does it look to others? How does it look? How would it feel to live in a community where other people are just like me, right? Or do they buy based on price alone? That's not why. So these are some real life examples of how emotion gets into it. Okay. Another part of the emotion is the fact that monkey see, monkey do. And this is an emotional component. Why? Because if you act with excitement and with urgency, I promise you, they're going to feel that. And it's the monkey see, monkey do situation. So just like if you see someone smile, you're going to smile back. If you see someone suffer, you're going to feel that too. Right? So the reason why this is important when it comes to how we interact with our buyers and sellers is because I want to make sure that, like, if there's a property that you know is going to sell in that day, right? Roni and I were just talking about this. If you speak to them and say, Roni, listen, we got to make the offer right now. Otherwise the property's going to be gone tomorrow. What can we do? Let's go back to my office now. Versus, okay, let me know, Roni, what you think. Right? So that was just a quick example, but you can see how the way that I present the information has a really big impact on how the other person is going to react. And it is that emotionally contagious component of the fact that monkey see, monkey do. We're all wired a certain way. We're all this genus, what is it? We're all Homo sapiens, right? And so there's certain things that all of us are wired to do. So let's use that kind of those natural instincts and use it to help be better salespeople.
Well, it's also, when we say monkey see, monkey do, it's also tonality, how the person
absolutely.
sees the information, because just like you said, you could have said that same, let's go put an offer in.
Right.
Or let's go put an offer in, like right now.
Or so the tone thing is so huge. So I was just listening to something where they talked about the fact that the words that you say are only 7% of what you communicate. So tone is tone was like 40%. So for example, if I say Roni, right? Okay, I'm probably mad at Roni. Maybe I'm a little happier, right? Like you can see just in that one word, right? Just in that one word, the tone communicates everything. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because in addition to us emotionally being contagious, from the way that we communicate as far as how we use our tone and everything else, your eyes, I think that's on the next screen, that you listen with your eyes. When someone's speaking, we should listen to them. It's very difficult to speak, for example, when someone's on their phone.
I get it.
But all of this is part of the salesperson relationship when you're interacting with another person. What is going on? I don't know how to use my computer today. Okay.
Because you're clicking on that side, so it goes to a back arrow as default if you're not on the actual arrow.
If I'm not on the actual arrow, thank you. Okay, so my question to you guys is, are you an empathetic listener?
Yes.
Yeah? So if you're not, well, it's something that it's honestly, it's a muscle that we can improve. Just like, you lift your weight and your bicep gets stronger. It's the same idea with any skill. Any sales skill can improve. So if you maybe need to be a better empathetic listener, these are some things that you want to think about and do. You want to be supportive. You want to be encouraging. You want to have sincere curiosity and really care. You want to be patient and caring. The other component of this, like Roni was saying, it's about tone. It's also about listening with your body language, right? If I'm angled toward you and I'm looking at you versus my body language is like this and I'm looking over here, it's a very different experience. All of these components all tie in to the emotional connection that you're having with somebody by looking at that person. When you're meeting them for the first time, hi Courtney, nice to meet you. It's very different than, something where I don't even look at her type of thing. This all ties into the very first step of being a good salesperson, is having these connections in a way where you're listening to them, you're emotionally connecting, you're trying to understand who they are, you're asking the right questions, you're being supportive, encouraging, and patient, and everything else. Okay, so I'm going to not do that. I'm going to do that. Okay, step 2. So Hey, Juan. So I came up with this concept, and I'm calling it the human value connection. So here's how I came up with it. I was doing Pilates. And the instructor said and talked about how important it was to have the mind-body connection. So she said, think about your abs, for example. And I had this like real moment of like, wow, that feels so different. Like when I'm thinking about the muscle, right? That needs to apply in our interactions when we're talking to a lead or a possible buyer or a possible seller. You have to have these two things that I'm going to talk about right now. I'm not going to press there. I'm going to press there. Okay, so what we're going to do moving forward is every opportunity you have to interact with a lead or a buyer or a seller or anyone at all, right? You're going to take advantage of it by focusing on the human value connection. And I'm going to explain what each of those things mean.
It's so much smarter.
You can mute yourself. That would be great. Okay, so the very first part of it is I want you to try and think, are you a human? And the answer is don't laugh, but the answer is probably yes. And the reason, I'm hoping it's yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I want you to try to connect with every single person on the level of you're a person and so am I, right? So think about things, what makes you similar? What do you have in common? And can you be vulnerable? It's okay to be vulnerable. I talked a lot about when the pandemic first started. If you remember, we had a lot of calls and I put a lot of calls together. And then I made a lot of emphasis on making calls yourself because it was kind of an easy way to connect on a human level. Like, how are you doing in this crazy world? Are you quarantining? Are you stuck home? What's going on? That was such an easy way to connect. And you immediately had, okay, I understand you because we all were experiencing something similar. I don't necessarily know that we can continue to connect in that way, but there's always going to be something that you can connect with. Right? So the very first thing that I want to go through your head when you're talking to someone new is how could I connect with them on a human level? What do we have in common? The second part of it is value. I almost changed this to insight, but I'm going to walk you guys through and then you guys tell me what you like better. Okay. So you're a human, yes, but you're also a professional because guess what? This is how you make your living, right? So even though you're connecting emotionally, you guys have to be the one, A, that's staying in control, and B, that's providing value. So it's your profession, it's your paycheck. If they say, Michael, I'm going to call you back, and you say, no, I will call you because you're the one getting a paycheck, not them, right? Things that you can think about in this other value connection is what is it that you're providing to them, right? What information are you providing to them? The reason why I liked another way to think of this is the word insight, because insight is essentially information beyond the obvious, right? So when you're showing somebody a home, so let's think about that, right? So if you're showing someone a home, right, you're showing it to them, right? That's a lot different than you having insight. Well, these are AirPods. And when you open the AirPods and oh, did you know the AirPods were discovered in, that was a bad example. You know what I mean? Like there's some, if you can give them insight into this product, more so than just showing them the product, it becomes a lot more interesting. Right. So like another example of that, like when I travel, I'm a big dork, but I usually read a book about that city or that place that I'm going. I don't want to just go see it. I want to understand it. Like when was it first created? What makes this place unique? And that makes me connected more to wherever it is that I'm going. So when you guys are trying to sell, we're focusing on that connection. If you can give them insight, which is information beyond what's obvious, right? They can see that there's a pool. But do they know that that pool was just diamond braided or do they know that the whole building was just redone or whatever information you can provide? When you start doing that, they're going to call you back. They're going to chase after you and give you referrals and your business will naturally get bigger and bigger. And you will have your role in going after them kind of reduces because you're so good at what you do, right? So what do you guys like better, the human value connection or the human insight connection? I couldn't decide. Okay.
I think both together.
Value and insight, it's both. So as far as the human part of it goes, I wanted to kind of dive into a little more about what that means. So a lot of us are newer, right? And I want to remind you guys, it's okay if you don't know the answer. right? It's about how you respond. It's about getting back to them with the right answer. So don't be scared of being vulnerable. I meant to go back and fix this slide and I didn't, but salespeople have traditionally been trained to have all the answers. Yes, we want to be experts, but again, it doesn't mean you have to come off as perfect. Okay, as far as value, so let's talk about this. What do you guys think, right? What are the ways that you provide value? Let's start with a lead, right? A lead is somebody that has an interest in buying or selling, and they connect with you because they put their information in online. What is an example of value that you can provide when you speak to them on the phone?
Mortgage rates.
Mortgage rates, okay.
Well, dissecting why they want to purchase, educate them
Okay,
on either the location or exactly what the market's doing.
Right.
In this particular area.
Market knowledge based on your
right.
experience.
Right.
So,
What about with buyers? So as you're working with the buyer, and the buyer, let's say, is just starting out the process, what are some things that you can do to provide value to a buyer? So now you have the relationship, you've gotten over that lead portion, now they're someone that you're working with actively. What is the way that you can provide value?
Tell them about the neighborhood.
Absolutely. Share with them about the neighborhood.
Schools.
Schools.
making sure they're
Explain
like
the whole-
properly prepared to enter the market.
Yeah. What'd you say, Yanni?
I was saying being educational,
Yeah.
teaching them and walking through every step of the process.
Right.
Because they don't know what's coming next. They don't know what to do.
Explain, I was gonna say explain them, so home line.
Right. So I absolutely think that one of the biggest values that we represent to our clients is helping them, guiding them through the process, because there's so many things that are going on. And the problem is that buyers think that it's easy. They don't realize that there is an average of 52 people involved in any real estate transaction. If you tell them that, did you know that there's 52 people that are going to be involved when you buy a home? There's a lot that can go wrong. You need a professional like me. All of a sudden they start to realize, okay, now I feel more comfortable. Now I understand I have to go with this. I have to work with a realtor because they're going to protect me, right? So absolutely, it's about guiding your buyer, educating your buyer on the process. What about with sellers? Similar, right? It's explaining to them how things are going to work. It's so scary, right? As a buyer or a seller, this is most likely people's biggest purchases of their life, right? So it's really critical that you are over communicating. I mean, that is essentially what we are paid for, is how we communicate and how well we communicate. That's all part of the value. Okay, so I wrote down 4 examples here. What can you share about the neighborhood? What can you share about the building? And by the way, if you're newer, maybe you're, like Katarina's moving to a new area, it's up to you to go and educate yourself, right? Ask other agents, ask the listing agent, go on Google, ask around, read about it, go on YouTube, and there's tons and tons of ways. It's up to you guys to empower yourself with information that you need. So if someone says to you, I want to buy and I want to live in East Boca, what is it like there? If you don't know, you better find out, because by the way, East Boca is very expensive. Another thing that you can do is there a comp you can share? So if there's a buyer who wants to make an offer and they're not sure what to offer, your job is to find the comp to help them make an offer where they feel smart, right? Buyers want to feel good about what they're doing, right? If you can make them feel good about, you have to go in and asking, like, oh, I don't know, Roni, I don't want to go in and asking. And then you show them a comp, look at this comp. It's sold for the exact same price and it's a smaller lot and there's no pool. We're going in and asking, oh, okay, that makes sense, right? Other ways you can provide value, set realistic expectations. Again, I'm going back to you because you have a buyer right now that unfortunately is at a price point where it's very, very competitive. You have to let her know from the beginning, you know, you're probably not going to get the first home that we make an offer on. Might not even get the second, but we're going to stick together and I'm going to make sure that you buy a home. So you're going to kind of guide her so she doesn't give up. If you don't tell her that by the third offer, she might be like, all right, peace, because she's tired of it, didn't expect that. The last example I have for you is to communicate clearly. Again, our job is to communicate. Okay, Sydney, so when I meet you at this home, I'm going to show you 3 homes. You're going to give me feedback. Hopefully you'll like one. If not, we'll show you more homes this weekend, right? So kind of lay it out further along the.
I was also going to say, in regards to communication, especially in this market when you're dealing with these buyers, you kind of have to prepare them for the lick.
Yeah,
You know, so it's gonna be an emotional roller coaster either way.
yeah,
But if you prepare them and let them know, hey, you know, we might have to come back and
Yeah.
do highest and best, or, you know, this is the situation where we're gonna find ourselves. So don't be disappointed if they come back and they want something else, or they want an adjustment. If
Right.
they're talking to us, we're still in the game.
all right, it makes it easier for your buyer because you've already told them that's what's gonna happen.
And then it smacks in the face too. When they
Yeah, it still does. Okay, so essentially, the way that you're going to use this strategy number 2 of being a kick-ass salesperson, is you're going to ask yourself, how do I connect with them, one person to another? That's the first question you're asking yourself. The second question you're asking yourself is, how could I provide value? Is it neighborhood information? Is it comp information? Is it expectations? Is it communication? Ask yourself that question and do these 2 things, and I promise you they will want to work with you. Did I do it right? Cool. Okay, this was my favorite step, or my favorite part in strategy about being a good salesperson, which is storytelling. Have you guys ever heard of this idea of using stories when you're selling?
Yes.
Cool. I like this one a lot. I think it's incredibly effective. So, interesting facts about stories. First of all, our minds are wired to stories. So think about, if those of you that have kids or have ever put a child to sleep, you will often read them a story. So why do you do that? Think about that. Like, why is that a thing, right?
Paint picture.
Sorry?
Paint picture.
It's about painting a picture, but it's also about the child will relax and they know for the next 5 minutes if my dad is reading, or I don't know that I said that, that was weird, but like if you were my dad, forget, okay, just whatever. So if someone's reading you a story, right? And you know that you don't have to do anything. You could just sit there and listen. You have no responsibility. You don't have to even speak. You just get to completely relax. And it's easier to fall asleep when you're just listening to someone else tell the story. It kind of like removes any responsibility or anything from me. My job is to sit back and listen to the story.
But it also makes their own imagination kind of engaged. Like after
Yes.
you're telling a story, they have the
Yes.
ability to relax and not think about, you know, and just like kind of get lost in the story.
Exactly, right. So I wrote a little bit more about it here, that you are subconsciously telling yourself, oh, and this happens in like the blink of an eye. But if someone says, Ronnie, I'm going to tell you a story, you're immediately going to think, I can just listen. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to decide anything. I can just listen and enjoy. So let's use that tactic when you're working with buyers and sellers.
I just want to add a statistic. Is that the longest running television show is 60 minutes. I think it's been on the air now for over 50 years.
Wow, yeah.
And the reason for that, it's always 3, 2, or 1 great story.
Great stories.
Yeah.
I love 60 Minutes. I watch it every Sunday.
Podcast.
Yeah. Okay. So as we've already learned, people decide things based on feelings, right? Not based on logic. Okay. So, and we know that stories activate our emotional center, right? That's why we're going to start using stories more. So let's talk about ways that we can use stories. I think I have a role play. Okay. Okay. So the first story we're going to talk about is buyer who tells you they are just looking. And we have to remember that we have a very short period of time and we can actually get them to be curious and want to talk to us, right? So who wants to role play with me? I just need someone to read the other part of it. Courtney?
I was gonna raise my hand.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jordana with Premier Listings. I'm a full-time realtor in Delray. What's got you looking online today?
I'm just browsing. Thank you anyway. I'm not sure what I'm doing yet.
Okay, well, feel free to look around the site and call me if you need anything. Thanks, bye. That was the first hand.
Ask more questions about homes.
Okay, that's bad. So let's listen to this one where I'm going to use a story. Hi, I'm Jordana with Premier Listings. I'm a full-time realtor in Delray Beach. What's got you looking online today?
Oh, I'm just browsing. Thank you anyway. I'm not sure what I'm doing yet.
Oh, I totally understand. You know, just yesterday, I closed on a beautiful home for a client that I met about a year ago. So if you tell me a little bit more about yourself now, I can start looking for you, get to know you, and that way when the time comes, I can help find you the right home.
Perfect.
Right? So that was a really obviously simple example, but I wanted to illustrate it's a very big difference when you reply, but not only to say, oh, well, you know what, it's a great time to get to know you, Courtney. I actually gave her a quick story. The stories can be short. It could just be one sentence fragment. Oh, I just closed yesterday on somebody I met a year ago, and it took me that long to get to know them because people are
I can
complicated.
say that even if I haven't.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Well, you know what? If you can't say it about yourself, you can say it about your team.
Right.
So you can say, we have clients closing all the time, and it took us years to get there, right? Because I get that. That is a concern as someone who's newer. But as you start to hear
I don't
more,
want to be that lying salesperson.
right?
Well, what I would do is I would say we.
Yeah, wait,
not I.
that-
Because
we
we're
don't
in the
wait.
team, you have a mentorship program. that
Okay.
you're in,
Or
people.
someone on my team
So
was
we should
just
be-
telling me they closed a deal
Or-
yesterday.
Or lead on 3 years
Yeah,
ago,
exactly.
they met.
Right.
I have those
Or
stories.
I kind of do it more neutral. I'll say most buyers aren't ready to buy immediately. They're usually 6 months away from
Yeah.
buying. How can I help you?
Yeah.
Set up a search so you're ready,
Yeah.
going that way.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I usually do.
Absolutely. Okay, so which scenario activated your curiosity?
The second
All right,
one.
I gotta work on my presentations here. All right, the second example is a buyer who has a realtor. Who wants to role play with me?
Courtney.
No, we need somebody else.
I
Cindy.
know, I saw
I
it.
raised mine.
Oh, Tove, here we go.
I thought he was stretching his fingers.
That I was.
Hi, is this Tove?
Yes.
Is that how you say your name? Hi, I'm Jordana with Creamer Listings. I'm a full-time realtor in Delray Beach. What's got you looking online?
I already have a realtor, but thanks anyway.
Okay, no problem at all. You can look around the site, and if anything changes, I'm here to help. Which, by the way, I've heard and I've done, right? I've said that to people, right? When maybe I was rushing or I wasn't really in it, I've made that mistake. So what about this instead?
But sometimes you can hear from the other person's tone if they're still open.
Yes.
Rather than we're very resolute.
Absolutely.
Got a realtor, bye-bye.
Yes.
That happens also.
You're absolutely correct. So this is what we can use when they're not necessarily resolute, but they're a little bit more open. So hi, is this Tove?
Yes, hi.
Hi, I'm Jordana with Creamer Listings. I'm a full-time realtor in Delray Beach. What's got you looking online today?
I already have a realtor. Thanks anyway, though.
No problem. I totally understand. Just yesterday, I closed on I have a lot of closings yesterday. Just yesterday, I closed on a beautiful home for a client who had a realtor when I first met her. But in the end, that realtor didn't end up finding her what she wanted. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to call you in about a week just to see how things are going. And in case you need additional help, I'll be there to support you.
Great.
Perfect.
So you guys see the difference in the story, and it's really not even a story. It's just a little component of this is how it can work. I've seen it happen like this before. Let me tell you, right? Because I'm the professional here. I'm going to tell you what happens. And we all know that there are many, many people that work with realtors to start, and it doesn't work for whatever reason. Maybe that realtor was their friend and they don't like working with their friend. Maybe the realtor stops, wasn't as on top of it as they wanted to be. But that's part of our industry, is that realtors or clients will shift. We want to be the person they shift to. So, okay, so let's remember, selling is influencing people to change, right? It requires people to overcome the unknown, and it's not just about getting them to buy something. So this is a great quote that Abe Lincoln wrote. I often avoid a long and useless discussion by others or a laborious explanation on my own part by a short story that illustrates my point. So I want you to start using this. So let's use your example, Roni. So you have this, so Roni was telling me yesterday, he has a client who has a price point that is very, very competitive, and it's a struggle. So, and I know that you've told her and you set the expectation, and for whatever reason, she's not getting it, right? So is there a story we can tell a client like that to help her understand? Right? So maybe you tell her, I heard about in my office, my broker was telling me that she had a client that made 15 offers and wouldn't listen to her advice and missed out on lots of opportunities. I don't want you to be that person. That wasn't a great example, but it sort of was, because I know if I was listening to that, I would be like, oh no, I don't want to miss out. Right? That's the part of me being a human. It's the FOMO, right? The fear of missing out.
And it would force her to maybe readjust her thinking.
Exactly. So here's my homework for you guys. As salespeople, we all need basic stories, 3 basic stories. You need a story to tell who you are. I'm Roni. I'm a full-time realtor in Delray Beach. I grew up in Delray Beach as well. I know the area inside and out. That's it. That's the story. It's that quick, right? I'm Michael Conti. I moved here from New York, like everyone else in the world, in New York. And I absolutely love living in Florida. That's it. That's your story. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. The next one is who you represent. Right? I'm Sherry. I love to help people buy their forever home. I love design, and it's my goal to help you find the home that fits your needs, right? That's who you represent. And then stories of who you've helped, people that you've done a good job with, people, and we've all had clients that have said, thank you so much, Juan, you're amazing. Talk about that, use that as a story, write it out so that you have it in your repertoire. Oh God. In your library of stories that you can use in these conversations. You want to have them available, right? So stories should be short, 10 to 30 seconds, maybe a little bit longer. I don't know about if you guys have watched any of our videos or like the recruiting videos, or if you're new.
I just watched.
Okay, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I have some stories in there, right?
Yes.
Okay. Like, I hope so. But I do, Courtney has been doing most of the recruiting and interviewing, but when I would be the one doing the interviews, I always would talk about, this is my story. This is why this company exists. I talk about that in the training.
Well, you and I had that discussion yesterday.
Yeah.
And it resonated with me because your story, how you started, was very similar to how I'm feeling right now.
Right. Right.
What got you here?
Yeah.
It's the same thing that got me here.
Yeah. And guess what? It's the same thing that everyone else is sitting around the table has all been in a similar situation as you. And so we emotionally connected and you immediately felt better, right? And so I want you to think about that and see if you can help your buyers and your sellers, your clients have that, okay, I feel better now, right? I'm overwhelmed by looking at, there's so much information available. What Zillow is telling me this, right? How can you emotionally address that issue that they're feeling? Don't feel overwhelmed, Stephanie. I got you, which is pretty much what I said yesterday, which is pretty much what you can say to your buyers and your sellers. Don't worry, Courtney, I'm going to help you sell your home, right? I've done it before and I'll do it again. And that's all in these 3 stories that you're thinking of, right? So there are other stories that you can kind of add and start to access. I have a lot of stories available of things and stories that I've been through. So if any of you have an issue and you come to talk to me about it, I will most likely tell you what happened to me when I did it or when I went through that, right? So that helps me be a good leader and a good broker, right? I want you guys to start thinking about those stories that you can use. Maybe a buyer that you worked with for a very long time. Maybe it was a buyer that when you first met them, they had another realtor. It could be any little story that you have, a buyer that was very grateful because you helped them get the property that they wanted, right? All of these are stories that you should be using in your sales career. So another thing that you can use is you can use this depending on who you're speaking to. If the person is open to it, you can say, let me tell you my story, Stephanie. We'll see if I'm the right person to help you. You can use the word story in your, it makes it like it's not a pitch. And remember how you feel, how children feel when you say, I'm going to tell you a story, they relax. So there's something wrong with saying, let me tell you a little bit about my story. I was a teacher and I did this and I did that. All of those things are part of your story. We should all be authentically us, because that's what's going to help you emotionally connect. This is another great part of storytelling, that it's a really easy way to use the power of a metaphor, right? It basically lies in the ability to create a visual image in the listener's mind. So for example, if I'm showing Courtney a house and I'm like, and I know that it's a great area, I can't believe it's available, I know it's going to sell fast. I could say something like, well, Courtney, this is like winning the lottery. The fact that this property is on the market right now, like we've got to go in for it. How does that feel when I said those words? It's like winning the lottery. Right? It's like, wow, that's awesome. It makes me want it more. Or if someone says to you, oh, well, Roni, this property here, it could be in a magazine and it's so beautiful, right? Things like that are really illustrative of what it is that you're trying to communicate. So what are some other metaphors? Have any of you guys used a metaphor when you're working with a buyer or a seller?
I see them on, like in the broker's remarks or public remarks, I've seen like could be on HGTV or something like that. And you can have like 60+ offers on it.
Right.
But it didn't look like it.
Right. So that's all it is. It's a spin, right? Whoever wrote that is putting a spin on a property that maybe doesn't deserve that HGTV status, but because they're using that little spin, right? And we should all use those spins. We're all in the job of marketing and selling. Right? We should all use the power of metaphor to create that image of HGTV. Anyone else use any metaphors? What are some metaphors we can use? Is there something that we can try and incorporate, right? Could we talk about, what about if you say to somebody, if someone says to you, okay, I want to buy a property in Fort Lauderdale, Roni, and I want to spend $250,000. You could say, okay, well, that's like finding a needle in a haystack, right? That's not an easy thing right now, right? But immediately when I say that, you understand, okay, damn, it's going to be hard.
So you could say this house is a diamond in the rough.
Perfect.
Right.
Wait, what does that mean? Is that good or bad? That's good. Okay, thank
It's
you.
good.
Okay.
Diamonds start out as ugly rocks,
Okay.
rough, and when you scrape all that away, it's diamond.
That's good for a house that needs work. I love that. That's a good one. Love that. Anyone else?
Like the first time you've ever heard.
I don't know. I'm like the stupidest smart person you've ever heard.
There's a lot of sayings. A lot of people think about
It's a good metaphor if you have to explain it.
Well, most people probably would know it. They're just not. Yeah. Anyway.
So they're really like finding a gem where
Yeah.
this can really.
Or even using the word gem. That's a
Right,
good word.
so
This home,
it's
this
such a low
listing is a
price, you
gem.
can make
I love
this-
that word. I always use it.
You do?
Yeah.
That's a good word. Yeah.
It's like a hidden gem.
A hidden gem, even better. Yeah.
You see that a lot on the broker's remarks, hidden gem.
Yeah. I've seen that too. Anyone else have any ideas for how we can use metaphors? Well, let us know if you do. Okay, so to summarize the 3 steps of being a kick-ass salesperson. Well, first off, I want to tell you, it does require practice, right? This is not like all of a sudden this is going to happen. You have to start thinking about it. You got to write it down. You got to train. You got to practice it over and over. And you have to have these 3 strategies. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to emotionally connect. So first and foremost, you're going to think about, how do I emotionally connect with that other person? How do I help that person trust me and like me and respect me? That's the first part. The second part is you're going to focus on the human value connection. So think about the mind-body connection. I'm going to connect with you as a human, and I'm going to connect with you as a professional by providing you with value. And the third part is you're going to use stories to illustrate your point and help clients understand what's happening in that situation. So my last slide. I want it to feel different. I want every single one of you to leave this room, or those of you on Zoom, to make your next phone call, and I want you to apply a different framework. And I want it to be a little bit uncomfortable and unnatural. Eventually, as you practice it and you repeat it, it will become more natural and more simple, and you will become a better salesperson. Hopefully. What do you guys think?
That's awesome.
Thank you, guys. So I would love to, this time next week, I will see all of your faces, and I would love to hear how you guys are incorporating any of these 3 strategies. We're going to open up next meeting by starting with who is emotionally connecting, who is using the human value connection, and what are the stories you're telling. Cool.
Do you have any other suggestions besides this book to kind of generate those patterns?
Okay, so that's a great question. And I can tell you what another book that I really, really enjoyed that pretty much has the same ideas as this great salesperson book. This was a book, by the way, that was recommended to me. I have a brother who's a VP of sales in this huge software company, and every single person that works for him, he makes them read that book. I actually thought it was a little tricky to read. I didn't think the concepts were communicated as clearly. Like I had to, it took me a while, like 6 months to just like get through it, right? Every day reading a couple pages. The book that I found easier as far as how it was organized is the book we're talking about on Friday, which is called Atomic Habits. So
It's really easy to read.
I go into so many showings and see that on people's nightstands.
Really?
It's
Everybody's
crazy.
freezing
So
already.
yeah, it's only because no, but that's no. I think no. It's that rule of when you're thinking about it, it shows up.
I don't know, but like in the last 2 weeks,
Okay,
I've
that book
seen
has
it in
been-
multiple houses.
The book has been out for
sure.
years, but I want you to know, Roni, it's like every single thing. So I read this book first, and I read it a few months ago, and I took notes as I was reading because I knew I was going to turn it into some version of a class to try and share some of these kind of new ideas. The fact that selling is influencing change and all these other ideas, right? So I read it and I kind of forgot about it. And then I started reading Atomic Habits. I mentioned it in the meetings. I think Shelly, you were the one that like you wanted to read it too or whatever. And let's all meet and talk about it. When I read that book, every single point that it made basically supported what he was saying. about human nature. And he has these amazing examples of all these really cool situations as humans that happen to us and how we can really kind of better almost direct our energy and better control the outcomes of what you're doing when you're making those calls or you're meeting with those people. Even though the book is called Atomic Habits, I think a lot more of it has to do with human nature and how you can better understand how we're all wired. And if you can better understand how we're wired, then you can probably do a better job of connecting with people, right? Like one thing, I was going to talk about it on Friday, but I'll tell you real quick. So one thing that I love that I was using, I was reading it while we were skiing last week, and I had a lot of time with my 12-year-old son on the chairlift. And so we talked about one concept that I really liked, which was the idea that when you want something, you use a significant number of additional sensory neurons when you want it versus when you actually receive the thing, which is really interesting, right? So which means like if you want a particular item, right? I want this pair of shoes, that feeling of wanting something, there's more happening in your body, right? Psychologically or physically than when you actually get that pair of shoes.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, I just think I was like so fat because I'm a 12-year-old boy who thinks he wants everything in the world, right? And so I was like, you know, when you actually get that thing, that's not what's going to get you going. It's this want, right? So in that book, that was one example of many. I mean, I thought it was so powerful that I'm going to read it again because I really enjoyed it. And I think it does apply to a lot of the concepts that we just talked about as far as how to be a good salesperson.
How did your 12-year-old respond to you?
My 12-year-old, he agreed.
Good.
He's really interested in like the psychological, like he wanted to talk about it and understand how that all worked. It was nice.
Great.
Yeah, it was really cool. So that's another, so if you haven't yet read the book, so on Friday, we're going to talk about it. I have notes from it if anyone wants my notes on it. It is kind of a long book. The way I felt about it was when I read up to 25%, it was fantastic. Then I struggled through 25 to 50. It kind of got boring. And then at 50, it picked up again. And all the way through the very end, I loved it. And we have an electronic version on Drive. If you want to read it on an app, you can open it in iBooks for free if you don't want to read the hard copy. Any other questions? I really hope this was helpful for you guys. I worked really hard to put it together. And thank you guys all for coming.
Thank you.